Okay, so today we are going to read a story, and you guys are going to answer the questions on the board, the first two before we start. So the first one is, what do a carrot, an egg, and a coffee bean have in common? And then number two is, what do they have to do with adversity? And so we just talked about in here, adversity is like troubles or hard times that you go through. Anything that is coming at you that is going to change you. So again, and I'm sorry that we have to do this again. Humor me for just a minute and don't be afraid to be honest. Raise your hand if you had a rough year last year. I think it's pretty safe to say, regardless of if you were a first-year freshman or if you were face-to-face or at home on e-learning or got quarantined 17,000 times, we all had a rough year last year. Despite that, you made it, and here we are gearing up for yet another school year that most likely won't be normal. Newsflash, people, nothing will ever fully go back to normal. Best case scenario, we're facing a new normal. Today, I hope to help change our mindset going into the new school year and need to ask you a super important question. Are you an egg, a carrot, or a coffee bean? Let's read a story as you decide. Abraham usually loves science class, but not today. Today, he hated science, school, and everything in his life. As his favorite teacher, Mr. Jackson, scanned the classroom, he noticed Abraham was not his usual self. After class, he told him to stay behind and asked him what was wrong. Abraham, who everyone called Abe, told Mr. Jackson how stressed he was about school. He had tests coming up and a big paper due, not to mention that he was really nervous about the big football game on Friday night. He dreamed of playing football in college and had heard that the college scouts were going to be at the game. A win would bring his team one step closer to a championship. To make matters worse, his parents were fighting a lot and even had used the word divorce for the first time. Abe said he tries to ignore all his problems and spends a lot of time on social media and watching videos, but that doesn't help and actually makes him feel more negative and depressed. It's hard living up to expectations everyone has while you're playing well, and it's even harder to hear all of the negative comments when you're playing badly, he added. Mr. Jackson nodded. He told Abe he knew exactly how he felt and went to the whiteboard and erased the scientific formula. Then he drew a picture of a carrot inside of a pot of water. What happens when you put a carrot in really hot water? Mr. Jackson asked. It gets hot, answered Abe. Well, it does more than just get hot, answered Mr. Jackson. I want you to go home tonight and try it and see what happens. Does anybody know what happens when a carrot gets hot?
It gets hot and soft and you're able to eat it.
It does, it gets soft. Good. Okay, so Abe said he would do it, although he was wondering how putting carrots in hot water was going to help him with his problems. Oh, and if you've never cooked before, ask for help. I don't want you to burn yourself, Mr. Jackson said with a big smile as Abe walked out of the classroom. The next day after class, Abe told Mr. Jackson that the carrot he put into water softened after about 10 minutes. Yeah, the carrot was softened and weakened by its environment. It was impacted by the conditions it was in. Mr. Jackson said, sort of like me, Abe said. Actually, just like you, Mr. Jackson responded, before going to the board and drawing a picture of an egg inside of a pot of water. Oh, I have the notes over here. So carrots, they end up what? They end up soft. And so a lot of times when people are faced with adversity, when there is hot water around us, when we're in hot water, people who are carrots often feel fear and hopelessness and that the world around them is influencing them and you can't change it. Now, tell me what happens when you put an egg inside of a pot of boiling water. Oh, this is an easy one, Abe said. Do we know what happens? What do you get? Hot, boiled egg. What happens? What happens with an egg when it gets hot?
Like, it also gets soft, right?
On the inside, it starts soft.
But it builds a shell around it.
It does it. So it builds the weird, it's like bouncy, like a bouncy ball. It's a hard-boiled egg, right? Okay. Yeah, but not as mushy as it would have been if you just cracked it open, right?
So for this one, it's more like a person who's shutting out everyone from their life and staying away from the world.
Exactly. So it says, oh, this is an easy one, Abe said. You get hard-boiled eggs. Even I know that. Great, Mr. Jackson responded. The hot water causes the egg to harden. The egg is hardened by its environment and the conditions it's in. Unfortunately, it happens to a lot of people as well. They become mean, angry, negative, and sometimes numb because of the difficult environments that they are in. They grow to hate life and hate people. Their heart hardens, and they lose the desire to love and to be loved. I don't want this to happen to you, which is why I'm trying to teach you this lesson. Side note, how many people, just think, this is a think question, how many people do you know hardened this past year? How many are still here? Maybe it happened to you. Just thinking. I understand, said Abe, who was beginning to see why Mr. Jackson was talking about carrots and eggs. The carrot is weakened, and the egg is hardened when put into hot water. I get it, Abe said. I don't want to be like a carrot or an egg. No, you don't, said Mr. Jackson. But there is one more part of the lesson and experiment that you need to experience and understand. Mr. Jackson erased the picture of the pot with the egg and drew a new picture with a coffee bean inside of a pot of water. What happens when you put a coffee bean in really hot water? Mr. Jackson added. I have no idea, answered Abe. Do we know?
Oh, doesn't it like melt and give the water taste or something?
It does give the water taste. It doesn't melt, but
Oh.
yes. Okay, so, well, this is what you need to do next. Mr. Jackson said as he grabbed a few coffee beans from a jar on his desk and placed them in Abe's hand. Go home and put these in hot water for about an hour and tell me tomorrow what happens. And be careful you don't burn yourself, Mr. Jackson shouted as Abe left the room. The next day after class, Abe approached Mr. Jackson and excitedly shared that the coffee beans he had put into the water eventually turned the water into coffee. I knew that ground coffee beans made coffee, he said, but I didn't know a coffee bean would do the same. Yeah, it works exactly the same, Mr. Jackson said, but it just takes longer. It's like magic, Abe said. It is, Mr. Jackson answered, but I prefer to call it transformation. He then went to the board and drew a picture of 3 pots side by side with a carrot, an egg, and a coffee bean inside. It's one of the simplest and most powerful lessons you will ever learn, Mr. Jackson said as he pointed to the board. Life is often like a pot of very hot water. It can be harsh, stressful, and a difficult place. You'll find yourself in environments and facing conditions that test who you truly are and can change, weaken, or harden if you let them. Like all the stuff I'm going through now, Abe said. Exactly, said Mr. Jackson. You're feeling the pressure of school, papers, tests, and the football game. You're feeling the heat that comes with the expectations of being a great football player. You feel like your parents' marriage is about to boil over. The hate on social media and the negativity in the world is rising, and it's all one big pot of boiling water. But you have a choice. You can be like the carrot that is weakened and softened by its environment and become fearful and hopeless. You can be like the egg that is hardened by its environment and be mean. Or you can be like the coffee bean that it transforms its environment. And when I look at you, I don't see a carrot. I don't see an egg. I see a coffee bean who will overcome challenges and change the world. I want you to remember this lesson for the rest of your life. Wherever you go and whatever you do, remember that you are a coffee bean and you have the power to transform any environment you are in. No matter how hard things get or how hopeless things look, don't give up. Realize that we don't create our world from the outside in. We create and transform it from the inside out. If you think you're a carrot, you'll believe the power and forces outside of you are more powerful than who you are on the inside, and you'll become weaker. If you think you're an egg, you'll believe the negativity in the world has the power to harden your heart and cause you to become negative like the world. But if you know that you are a coffee bean, you will not allow the outside world to impact you. You will know that the power is inside of you, and it is greater than the forces outside you. With this insight, you will transform your environment and the world from the inside out. The power is on the inside. Be the coffee bean. Mr. Jackson then reached into his pocket and pulled out a coffee bean and handed it to Abe. Keep this in your pocket as a reminder of who you are and the power you possess. I know the best is yet to come for you. That's the end of the story. But today and this year, I'm going to challenge each of you that are in my classroom to be a coffee bean. Don't be complacent. Don't be negative. Have the mindset that you transform the environment you're in, and starting with you, we will have a great year through the boiling water. The culture in our school is changing, and I don't know how many of you have been here or how many of you are freshmen, and I will just say that the culture here isn't what it should be. You should be proud to go to the school that you go to. Whenever I was in high school, we were so excited to go to the football games and spend time with our friends. We were excited for Spirit Week. We always wore Spirit shirts like that said Newsom High School on it. And so we want the culture of this school to be positive, to be a place that you're happy about going, to be a place that you're excited to go to. And so I want to challenge you to help me build the culture of this school and changing the environment around you to be a positive, encouraging place to be. One coffee bean changes the water, but when you have more coffee beans, it helps flavor the water even more. For the 2021-22 school year, let's be the coffee beans together and change the school culture for the better. Let's become the #1 students and #1 staff that the school needs. Do you guys know? So when we sing the alma mater, and we will learn the alma mater, it's like the school song, at the pep rallies and all of that, everybody goes like this. And it's because the first principal here, Mr. White, said that we were the #1 students and #1 staff. And so we always hold up one. Some people think you're pointing, but no, it's actually holding up #1. So I want to get back there. Let's be the #1 students. Let's be the #1 staff. It starts with you, and it starts with your environment, your group of friends, or if later on, if you're a teacher, it starts in your classroom. Be the coffee bean. So this year I'm gonna move this real quick. One of my students, it's okay, thank you. One of my students ended up drawing this for me last night. And so it says, be the coffee bean, or be a coffee bean, and so we're gonna hang it up in the classroom, just as a gentle reminder to change the environment around you. So be the inspiration this year.
To be honest, I felt that story on a spiritual level because I
Good.
went through all 3 of those things.